the Dark Crusade. And perhaps it will indeed.
You would defile this sacred place with this horror!
Aberrant child, you will know peace.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. It's been a long time since we made a video. We are finally making a video today, and in today's video we are talking about Lords of the Fallen. This game came out back in October of 2023, so it's been a hot minute since we played it. I've seen quite a few updates with this and trying to get through some of my backlog. Some of the games that we have like this was one of the ones that I was like, you know what, I want to try it again. I've been seeing the CEO and some of the developers of the game on X and talking about all their updates that they have, and he's just very vocal on social media, so I was like, you know what, let's give it a try. Let's see what is some of the new stuff. Let's see what the updates are. Because honestly, when this game came out, I actually quit playing it because the performance was horrendous. I think I got to like the third boss. It's like the boss that's on like the horse, and after that I was just like, you know what, this game is just so glitchy. Like after I beat that boss, because it was so difficult by the performance issues and all the other issues that it had, that I actually just quit playing. So here we are, and so I wanted to check out the game and see all of the updates, how well it is working, see if the performance has been fixed. Short answer is the game is actually in a incredible state. I think that they have done a very good job at fixing a lot of the performance issues. It's not perfect, but it definitely is way better than I remember back when I played it on release date back in October of 2023. And that was also a hard time too, because around that same time Lies of P came out, and Lies of P was just so much better optimized, at least in gameplay perspective. Like, yes, it had its glitches and whatnot, but just like when you set them side by side, Lords of the Fallen was just in a it was just not finished. It was half-baked, right? And so it was very easy to basically, all right, I'm not playing this anymore. I'm just going to play Lies of P, right? And yeah, the game is in a much better state now. It's not perfect, but man, the game is so much more playable. But man, compared to release date, this game is almost night and day difference. I think that they have done a bang-up job. I know this game has been out for a while now, so I'm not going to give a whole in-depth review. I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts and opinions on the game as it sits right now in 2025. Game's been out for a while. I just want to give some things that I liked and some things that I haven't liked as I beat the game, rolled the credits in the game. There are multiple endings. I only just beat it once, and so there are different, endings you could get, but this is just on my first playthrough, start to finish. One thing that I do really like about Lords of the Fallen is the interconnectivity of all of the different areas you go to. It reminds me a ton of the original Dark Souls. You have your Firelink Shrine, and just everything is just very interconnected with the world here, and I really like that. You have your hub area, and just like everything is connected. You got your shortcuts that you can unlock, and I don't know, I just really like having everything just like woven really expertly together, and I think Lords of the Fallen does an excellent job in that. I really like that. Another thing that I think sets Lords of the Fallen apart from many other Souls-like. There's so many Souls-like out there now, and I feel like a lot of them kind of fall into the same trap as like, oh, it's just like this, it's just like Dark Souls, it's just like Elden Ring, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, they don't do something quite different enough, where Lords of the Fallen does this thing with the Umbral world, and you have your Umbral lamp, and it's simultaneously like two different realms at the same time. So I think that is really cool. I think that's an idea that really sets this game apart. You'll have entire enemies that are only available to fight in the Umbral world, or you are fighting a boss and it's got all of these little like Umbral spirits on it that are actively healing the boss, so you have to like pull up your lamp and kill out the enemies, or even just switch entirely to the Umbral world. There's like these giant like face demon monsters that can only be fought in Umbral. There's like these Grim Reaper looking things that have like these bone swords, only can fight in the Umbral. So traversing the world, right, where you're getting to a spot that is blocked and you hold up your lamp and boom, there's a bridge that goes across, or like there's a wall here or a fence or something here that's blocking your way. You hold up the lamp and you can go through it because it is not there in the Umbral world. So that is one thing that I actually really liked. I thoroughly enjoyed just exploring the world, going between the regular world, or the, I don't even know what you would call it, the regular world. I know they have a name for it, I'm just drawing a blank. And then switching between that and Umbral I thought was really cool, and I think that really sets this game apart from many other Souls-like. It's just like a neat little gimmick trick that is only available in this type of game, so really cool. Along with that, I really loved the design of pretty much everything in this game. It all looked really cool. The world looked really cool, the Umbral world looked really cool, the enemy designs looked awesome, the boss designs looked awesome, just everything about this game I thought looked really cool. It's visually pleasing. I really liked how everything looked. Also, I really loved the armor. A lot of the armor sets looked really cool, and that's one thing that I will say about Lords of the Fallen. You play Elden Ring and Dark Souls, and I have to admit that there's a lot of like armor sets that just aren't really that cool to me. I feel like Lords of the Fallen really tried to make almost all of the armor sets look really cool. Personally, for me, I ended up just wearing the Berserk armor that looked like from Berserk pretty much the whole time. I thought it looked cool. Or the Dark Crusader armor, I thought that was really great. And now another thing that I also liked, and I'm a little mixed on it if I'm being honest, is the combat. I think the combat for the most part is enjoyable. It's passable. When you're fighting a lot of the enemies, it feels fine. That said, there are times that it does feel very floaty, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if that's even the right word, where it's just very clunky. It doesn't feel as fine-tuned. It's kind of hard to put it into words, like where you play Dark Souls 3 and then you play this one, something feels a little bit off, and I'm having a hard time really describing what it is. It's one of those things where it's like you notice it when you play it, but it's hard to say it, right? Now that is like the majority of the things that I really liked about the game, and these are they're not necessarily bad things that I don't like. It's just more like nitpicks. These are things that I'm like, I don't really like that. First thing is the parries. While they are cool to finally get off, I just feel like the parry window was a little bit like hard to get, especially every boss or every enemy has a different parry window, so it's very hard to consistently get parries. I know there was one boss that I did parry quite a bit because he took a ton of damage from the visceral attack, or I forget what they call it here. But yeah, the parries just felt a little off, and more times than not I ended up just not doing the parry because I just couldn't get it and it wasn't worth it. So a little bit tricky. Along with that, the bosses, I feel like while they all looked really cool and they looked really epic and crazy, they just kind of weren't. Most of the bosses I felt like were fairly easy to fight. There was not a whole lot of difficulty. There were some earlier in the game that I felt like were a little bit harder, but I feel like most of the bosses were fairly easy. That said though, there are a couple bosses that I just kind of didn't like really at all, and they were like the two that right off the top of my head, I don't remember the names, but it was this boss where it shows this giant, like epic giant skull crow thing, and you're like, oh dang, this is gonna be a crazy boss, like this looks insane. And you don't actually fight the crow. The crow sits in the nest, and you try to like go around and find like this little spirit girl that you have to pull into the real world and do some damage. It was a mob boss fight, and it was really annoying. It wasn't that difficult. It did take me a few tries, but it's just like you see the boss, you're like, dang, this is gonna be crazy, and it just was kind of like, oh, I'm just fighting a bunch of standard enemies chasing this ghost around. The last boss, like a deer, was also really anticlimactic. Looked really cool, same concept. He's just kind of standing there, and his like umbral fire or whatever you call it is just kind of hopping to all his servants, and they're throwing fireballs, and you just go around and you kill all the servants, and he dies. Like, I thought that was very anticlimactic. There are different endings, so maybe depending on the enemy, we get a different fight. I don't know. And I just felt like the final boss fight was very anticlimactic. Same with like I would say that was a lot of these bosses where they looked really cool and intimidating, and they just weren't that tough. I will say that like when I played this game when it first came out, I thought that the difficulty was a lot tougher, I should say. A lot of these bosses were a lot tougher. Like just the Greta, or whatever her name is, at the very beginning that you fight with the wings and the umbral like swords that come down. I thought she was much more difficult the first time I played back in 2023 when a game came out. and it just seemed like all of these bosses were incredibly easy. Some of them took me a few tries, but nothing where I'm like stuck on it for hours. So if you are someone that is wanting to get into Souls games and are a bit intimidated because a lot of these games are very tough and very challenging, Lords of the Fallen would fit right in. I feel like some of the mob bosses and like the areas that are just filled with mobs are a lot tougher than the bosses. We'll get to that here. Another thing, this does apply to the bosses a little bit as well as just normal traversal and fighting enemies, is that I was fighting the camera. Like, it just got into an awkward spot and then I couldn't see, and it's like stuck in a building. So there's a lot of camera issues here. It didn't happen too often, but enough for me to be like, dang, I literally died because I couldn't see what was happening. And then lastly, one of the things I didn't like is the mobs. Like, I feel like the game itself wasn't too difficult, and how they increase the difficulty is that, like, hey, let's just put a bunch of really annoying enemies in this one tiny area and have you go through it. Oh, and they chase you down. They, like Dark Souls and whatnot, like if you run far enough away, they'll stop chasing you. I feel like these enemies chase you for a lot longer, because there's times where I thought I was safe and then all of a sudden I'm just getting backstabbed. But you know, there would be like an area where you would have like, so backtrack here, some of the most annoying enemies, which every Souls game has annoying enemies that just do stupid high damage. They're very aggressive, very hard to kill. Those Red Knight dudes that will like sit and they'll heal themselves and then they do holy damage, they are annoying. You got like the fire witches that will cast fire at you that track, and she just blasts you from a distance at the same time that thing's chasing you. And you know, hopefully you're not in Umbral, because there's times where I was in Umbral and I had like those giant skull dude things, face things that you have to like pry open to hit the inside of them like a clam, and they take like no damage from the front. They're heavily armored, and you'd have a bunch of those. It just ton of mobs, right? And so I personally don't like mobs. I think they're fine every now and then, but when you go from area to area and they're all just mob bosses, it gets really annoying. So but that's kind of like the last thing that I personally didn't like. Overall, I think the game is great. I think that they do a very good job compared to when they first came out, and that if you had some reservations and haven't beaten the game yet or haven't given it a second try yet, I would highly recommend giving it another try. I think they really fixed a lot of those things that were, for me personally, just made the game very hard to jump back into. And the game is playable. Although it's not perfect, it does have its glitches here and there, but I think overall the game was really fun. Combat, yeah, still a little floaty, but I think for where it was before and where it is now, I think it is great. I really love the Umbral. I think that's what really makes Lords of the Fallen stand out against all of the other Souls-like games. And if you're really into Souls-like games, I would say that this is one that would be worth picking up. If I were to give this a number score out of 10, I'm not real sure. I'm sitting between like a 7 and an 8, right? I personally liked a little bit of a challenge when it comes to boss fights, and these ones were super easy. Yeah, I'd probably say maybe like an 8-ish, just because I really enjoyed the way the game looked and the way the Umbral handled and the traversal and the internet connectivity of the world. I thought it was really great. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are continuing our stream cycle. We're going to stream this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. So make sure that you guys are subscribed for that. We'll be playing more Monster Hunter Wild, so I'm pretty excited for that. And yeah, we are getting closer and closer to being a YouTube partnership. We just really need to get our watch hours up. So if you guys haven't already, go check out some of my other videos. Go comment on them. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, without further ado, guys, we'll catch you on the next video.